Well, it looks like we're having more technical difficulties. For some reason, my computer keeps shutting down. I've got my phone, and let's see here. Let's see if I can get I don't know if it's just because I'm not active on it for some reason it keeps shutting down. And let me put it on. We were supposed to use, okay, yeah, all right, it's bringing everything back up. We were supposed to use Microsoft Teams because Zoom kept messing up, and now I can't get Microsoft Teams. Let's see, all right, so there we go, I've got it on. All right, so as usual, before we start our Torah lesson, we always pray and ask for God's guidance, and we pray Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to study or immerse la'asok, the words of Torah. So I'm glad you're here with me on this wonderful Shabbat. It's 33 degrees here in Iowa. It's good to see Michelle on here. Thankful that you are here with us. Hopefully I don't have any more technical difficulties here. Now, we have I've talked about this before, but parashah, how those came about, I think I talked about it in the first lesson about how they came about during the time of Moses. And later on, these sections of the Bible that we read through every year, they're named after the first word or first few words in the section that you read. So this week it is Chayei Sarah, which means the life of Sarah or Sarah's life. And ironically, it begins with her death. But there was so much that she brought to the world. I mentioned before in the past that when we look back at the genealogy, her name was Yiska, which means to see. So she was a prophetess, and then she became a princess. And then she became, it was still, when her name was changed from Sarai to Sarah, it was princess still. But what I didn't mention last time was that she was a princess to her own people. But when she crossed over with Abraham and God changed her name, then she became basically the princess or the mother to everyone in the world. So everybody can be traced back to Abraham and Sarah because they were converts. They came out of idolatry and they found the one true God. And so we have that in Genesis 23:2 in this week's portion, it says Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is in Chevron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham came to eulogize Sarah and to weep for her. Now, it's interesting to note that the word weep, when you look in the original Hebrew in the Torah scroll, it's written a little bit smaller for some reason, the letter Kaf. And it's very significant. So when we look at all of the Bible, what a lot of people call the Old Testament or the Torah, there are 304,805 letters in the Torah, and every single one of them is precious, and there's a certain, they have meanings and understanding, and there is what we would call the law of the first use of a letter. So the first time a letter is used in the Torah. So if we go back a few sections before, when we started all our Torah cycle over again, and we read Bereshit bara Eloheinu, or Elohim et. In the beginning, God created the. Bereshit starts with a bet. So, but that's not the first. That's a preposition. That's not the first time we see that letter bet. The first time we see where we can see the definition of what that letter really means is the next word, bara, create. And so the letter bet means house. And where are things created? They're created in the home. The mother creates the home. And that brings us back around to Sarah, who was known as someone who took very good care of her tent and her family, and was a great example for many people to come. So this letter, Kaf, which is written really small, they tell us in the commentaries that that Abraham basically kind of curtailed his crying. It says that he wept, but he kind of toned it down a little bit so that we could learn something from this, so that we could learn about love and gratitude and respect and honor. So when someone, if you've ever lost a loved one, and I'm sure if you haven't, it's one of those things you just cannot explain to somebody unless it's happened to you in your life. I lost my late father-in-law. He was my spiritual leader. He was a lot to me, and so when we lost him, it was a great loss. And so he was eulogized. When he was eulogized, basically what Abraham did in this instance is that he basically got up there and he said, here's what the world is missing now. Missing a wonderful woman named Sarah. So yes, he was grieving and he curtailed his grieving, but he didn't go up there and sit there and express what his personal loss was. He was basically getting up there and he was telling everybody about what her accomplishments were, how much of a loss to the community that will be, because there'll be a vacuum of her missing. Now, Sarah's name, like we mentioned before, has its root in the word Sar, or prince. Maybe you've seen synagogues named Sar, Shalom, or something like that, Prince of Peace, referring to Jesus, Yeshua. So like I said before, originally she was a princess to her own nation in Aram, but then in the end she became princess to the entire world. She had gone from being someone who's locally respected to a personality whose impact was felt the world over. And so when we think about that, when it comes to our lives and someone goes to eulogize us, what impact have we made in the world? Now, it is said that people influence, no matter what, even if you're a rock and you don't do much, you're going to influence at least 50 people in your lifetime. So that's important. 50 people is more than you can think. Now, next thing I want to move on to is in the life of Sarah, is in Genesis chapter 24. Here we have a whole chapter that is dedicated to finding a bride for the living sacrifice. Remember Isaac? He's a living sacrifice. He's a picture of Yeshua. He's a picture of Jesus. And you know what? Something else? You know that they say that Isaac was a spitting image of his father. Interesting, huh? So here you have a whole chapter of the living sacrifice and the search for the bride, the pure and godly bride. I don't know about you, but that's kind of exciting. When you see these patterns in the Bible, then you see their fulfillment later on, it's exciting, and that only makes it so where you look for more of those patterns, and you become more and more hungry for those things, and you want to see what happens with those, and so you become hungry for the word. I see more people are joining us, and there's some conversations, some questions coming in, and I'll do questions later when I can kind of do it, because like I said, I'm having a little bit of computer difficulty here. But so Abraham sends Eleazar, his servant. Kind of sounds familiar, huh? We're talking about, we serve a living sacrifice, and he's the spitting image of his father, and we are his servant, and we are being sent to look for his bride. And where is he sent? He's sent back to his people. But what were his people? They were pagan idolaters from the nations. So that is basically what our mission is as a servant, is to go out into the nations, to go out into the world, and to find a bride for him. Now, when we look at Genesis chapter 24, and we look at, actually before we go there, when we look at Isaiah 7:14, we look and we see something. I remember I mentioned something about the law of first mention in the Bible. So when in this story where Eleazar goes to find Rebecca, who is a maiden, that word maiden is Alma, and that's the first time that it's mentioned in the Bible. And wherever something is mentioned for the first time, it lays a foundation for what that word's usage is later on. So when we get to Isaiah 7:14, where it talks about, behold, a virgin, and his name will be Emmanuel, we know that verse of scripture. What happens there is you'll run across, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but it's happened to me. There are groups of people out there. They're called Anti-Missionaries. They're just group of Jewish people that they think that everyone that is Christian is Catholic. And so what happens is that when they're dealing with these folks, they're dealing with what they think everybody is Catholic. When they look at Christians, they think everybody is Catholic. And that's just normal. I mean, so many people don't dig deep, but the whole purpose of it is, that's one of the first verses that they attack, is that they look at that word virgin and they say that word just means maiden. It doesn't mean virgin. And so what I want to just kind of break down for you today is so that you can see. And when we go to, let's see, so it's Genesis 24, and I've got it here in the Hebrew. So it's the servant, it's the prayer that he prays, and okay, so Abraham, Eleazar, he sings, and so he says, I'm looking for the exact, and he said in verse 12, he said, God of my master Abraham, maybe you arrange it for me this day that you do kindness with my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters, that word daughters in the Hebrew just means young girls, of the townsmen come out to draw water. Let it be that the maiden, now the word here used is hanara, and it's the same word as maiden. I mean, it's as Alma, as virgin. It's when you go back in antiquity, when you go back to those day and age, someone that was unmarried was considered a virgin. So let me see, where was I? Behold, I stand by the spring of water, and the daughters of the towns come out to draw water. Let it be that the maiden to whom I shall say, please tip over your jug so I may drink, and who replies, drink, and I will even water your camels. Her will you have designated for your servant, for Isaac, and may I know through her that you have done kindness with my master. So we've read the story this week and we understand what happens. So Rebecca comes out and she does exactly what his prayer was, and then so we jump down to verse 43, I think it is. Yeah, let's see. Behold, so now he's with the family. Everything is all happening. He goes to Laban's house. Laban invites him in. He doesn't even want to sit down at this point. He's so excited about telling this story about what happened, about how he's the servant of Abraham and why he's there. He says in, let's see, verse 42, he starts telling the song, I came today to the spring and said, God of my master Abraham, if you would graciously make successful the way on which I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let it be that the young woman who comes out to draw, and to whom I shall say, please give me some water to drink from your jug, and who will answer, you may also drink, I will draw to water for your camels too. She shall be the woman whom God has designated for my master's son. I had not yet finished meditating when suddenly Rebecca came out. So then we understand this. So in the Hebrew, all of a sudden he uses the word Alma. And the point of all this is that we have to understand that in the Hebrew dictionary, Alma means maiden. Okay, so the maiden who comes out. And here's what's interesting about this whole virgin thing. Now, like I said, when it comes back to Catholicism, I'm not attacking Catholicism or anything. Like, I never really do anything like that, but I'm just telling you about what they believe. And so what they have done is they have elevated Mary to a divine status. In other words, she has become a co-redeemer. And they even believe that she is still a virgin, even though you read in the Bible that Jesus later on, he has brothers and sisters. So yeah, anyway, but there's even this point where they believe that human intimacy is actually, it's just kind of like this necessary evil. They only get together for the purpose of making children, and that's it. It's kind of sad. I mean, we have friends, my wife and I, we have friends that they had a couple of children, and that's it. And anyway, so it's not a biblical concept. That's not the way they believed in the first century. So when we look in the Hebrew dictionary, we can see that there are synonyms. Cinnamon is something you put on toast. Synonyms. All right, understand the word I'm trying to say. Words like other words that compare. Anyway, you have maiden, you have maid, you have damsel, you have lass, or young woman. And it's come to mean that it's basically, the definition of it is a unmarried woman or a young woman, or here's the definition of a maiden, a virgin. So that first century thinking, you have to have those morals in your mind. So now in our Western world today, it seems like virginity, what's that? Nobody really cares about things like that anymore. But that was important in biblical times. It was important in the first century to remain pure and undefiled. And that's just the way it was. So Eleazar's mission wasn't just to go find just any girl. It was to go and find a pure and godly woman for the living sacrifice. That's what it was supposed to be. So this maid or this maiden, when you look up the definition of that, it says that it means fresh, new, and unused. Interesting. Kind of like you've heard a ship make its maiden voyage. Now, the male version of this word of Alma is LM, and it basically means a lad or a stripling, someone who is basically between boyhood and manhood, somewhere between in that area. In other words, he's someone who can marry. and considered in antiquity a virgin. Now, it's not always the case, for some reason. Virginity always seems to be more about the woman than the man. Man seems to kind of get away with it. We won't get too much into that. So, but if we go to the Hebrew dictionary again and we look at the word virgin, and that's in the Hebrew, that's the word betula. And betula, it basically means, guess what? Damsel. Isn't that what I just said was a synonym for the other word for maiden? Alma, damsel. That's kind of like saying dirt and soil. So damsel and maiden are the same thing. So when you go to the Hebrew dictionary and then you look for the synonym of betula, the first one that comes up is the word alma, maiden. So virgin means, there's three definitions in here, and virgin means that is someone who has had no, or a virgin is someone who's had no carnal knowledge of a man. And the second one is that a woman is a woman who has no children. Now remember, this is first century thinking. And then also the third thing is a virgin could be a woman who's just not married. Now, that is the noun version of it. Now there's also the adjective. And when you look up the adjective, it actually means pure and untouched. And then the second one, here, remember what I was saying, what the definition of a maiden or maiden is? Here now it's saying that it's fresh, new, unused. I don't know if you get excited about this or not, but I kind of do. And then the third thing means, the adjective means maidenly. So you can see how all these go together. And then, so if you ever run across somebody that says there was no such thing as a virgin birth because it was a maiden, it wasn't a virgin. No, those words are synonymous. They do go together. So that's kind of like saying, I don't know, let's see. I see Catherine Wetzel is watching, and of course we have Michelle, and then I see my wife is watching. Let's see, Michelle, you live in Canada. I'm not sure where Catherine is from. So in America, when someone says they're 3 sheets to the wind, most Americans, especially people of my age, they know what that means. Now, someone that doesn't know what that means and they interpret it later on, say 2,000 years from now, they'd look at it, and you and I all know that word means that someone is drunk. But someone may say, look at that, and they're looking at it spiritually, and they're saying, oh, wow, 3 sheets in the wind, it's a spiritual thing, and it's all blowing spiritually, So in other words, what happens is people look at things like that and they interpret themselves, not knowing exactly what. I see Catherine's in Minnesota. Oh, you're just north of us. So we're here in 33-degree Iowa. So anyway, so you have an understanding that people interpret for themselves what the author is saying. But you have to know the author, and you have to understand the customs and the times and what is happening in those days. So there are things that are said in the Bible that we don't always understand. Many people, when they hear the word yoke in the Bible, they automatically think of an oxen yoke, which is, yes, that was back then, yes. It was used often, but it also means teaching. So when Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, he's basically saying that my teaching is easy to understand. You should be able to understand this. And he was talking to anywhere from people that were not very learned to very well learned people. That was a little side thing. So getting back to what we were talking about. So in 300 BCE, so 300 years before the Gospels, before the stories of Yeshua, of Jesus, the Bible was translated to Greek. And I think it's like 70 or 72 rabbis and scribes and Hebrew scholars. They all come together, theologians, and they translated the Hebrew Bible into what everyone knows as the Septuagint, or this is basically where the King James was eventually translated into English from. They were translated from the Septuagint. And so when they got to Isaiah 7:14, they used the Greek word parthenos, which means virgin. So here you've got these 70 some scholars, Hebrew writers, all sitting there saying, yeah, maiden is virgin. So it's the same word. Now, then later on, 300, 600 years later, after, when Catholicism coming in and people are starting to kill, people that believe, and all of a sudden they were kind of like, no, they kind of change it. It doesn't mean virgin anymore. They're kind of trying to save themselves. Now, in the Song of Songs in 1:3, it talks about a maiden there also. And that word is almut. Now you remember Alma, and then you have almut. Now, that word, the commentators often say that sometimes it means the nations, which is good, because remember what we're talking about. We are ambassadors, we are emissaries, we're like Eleazar, we're going to the nations, and we are trying to draw people to God like maidens. And so when now this is their words. This is the words from the first century, from rabbis and commentators. They're basically saying people that are born anew. That's significant. That's real significant. So it's known that converts are as pure as the wind-driven snow. Now, I think I mentioned on one of the social media posts I did yesterday that I think there's like 36 times more than any other commandment when you're reading in the Torah. You'll find that 36 times has something to do with converts and taking care of the converts. Yes, it's like A1 steak sauce. It's that important. Converts are that important that God talks about them 36 times more. So with that thought in mind, when we look at other parts of the Torah, and we look and we see the story of Rahab, remember that story about the harlot who, she even had a house of ill repute. She helped the spies and all of that. And it is said that she performed teshuvah, or she repented, and that she converted, and that she went in the mikveh. She was immersed, and according to that day and according to their conversion process and everything, that means that she is brand new. Now remember, that these words, when we read in what people call the New Testament, that's not a new concept. People, going in the water was always part of the conversion process. And so in their words, they actually come out and say that if Rahab or any other harlot were to do something like this, it would be considered that she would come out a virgin, an alma. They use that word, alma. Perfect and pure. So you have to understand, in Jewish thought, there's no such thing as just a spiritual conversion or just something in the mind. It actually has to do with body and soul and spirit. So in other words, when you come up out of the water, they see you, the convert, as a new person, literally. Like you are brand new. Wow, think about this. So that's why so many, after they go through this process, they have a name change. They have a name change. And so that's, so Abraham, Sarah, Jacob, Israel. The name changes. They become new creatures in God. Now, one of the last things I want to touch on, and it's still on the same subject, comes from the Midrash Rabbah 123 commentary on this particular subject. It talks about how in the end times that God will be at the head of a dance circle. At the head of a dance circle of maidens. Oh, I love this. Psalms 48 and 14 talks about ramparts, but that can also be known as a dance circle. So these maidens will dance with youthful vigor, so with a newness of life to them, and it's described with what? With almut. Yeah, I love it. Why? Because we are born again. We will be able to see him for who he is, and we will, I don't know about you, I want to dance, okay? I want to, yeah. Okay, put your hands out here like this, all right? Or we're grabbing hands right now. We're dancing in a circle right now. We're dancing like maidens before the Lord. There he is right there. He's in the middle. That's our God. Oh, I don't know about you, but wow. That's exciting stuff, folks. That's exciting stuff. And I'm going to end that with right here. And I realize that was a high point. It's a cliffhanger. Come back next week. You'll love it. We'll talk about it even more. But may God bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and give you peace. And wait a second. Let me look, make sure. Okay, let's see here. So let me see, look back here. Yeah, Michelle, yeah, when, we talk about weeping and Jesus wept. Yeah, that's something I thought of the same thing, and it's kind of a great concept in there. It's like, how did he weep? I mean, that's they say it's the shortest verse, and it's a powerful verse. And then Yeshua's baptism, and I think we talked about this in answer to Michelle's question, or I think she was just commenting on it, but basically we talked about this, I think, a week or two ago, him basically coming into, his cousin was in the priesthood, and so he was making Yeshua in the priesthood. So anyway, I see Rick Walters was on. I don't know if he's still on. Nolan Smith. I'm glad all of you folks joined in, and we're going to do this again next week. I think we're just going to have to keep doing it this way because it seems to be the only way that works. But God bless, and we'll see you next time.